Hi, Oscar fans. There are less than 2 weeks to go before the Oscars as we're recording this. And the big mystery is what's going to win Best Picture, because we've been getting conflicting tea leaves with 1917 at the PGA Awards and Parasite at the SAG Awards. I'm Daniel Montgomery, here with my fellow Gold Derby editors Tom O'Neil, Chris Beachum, Joyce Eng, and Susan Wloszczyna. Tom, starting with you, is it 1917 for the Oscar? Is it Parasite? Or is it something else entirely?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's a fascinating mystery, isn't it? We've had 1917 win PGA. We've had it win DGA. We had it win the Golden Globe in a nice surprise. But we haven't heard from BAFTA yet as we record this, which is not always a good sign. I mean, it hasn't had a great track record recently predicting Best Picture. But up until DGA, it looked as if Bong Joon-ho was the frontrunner for the Oscar for Best Director too. The Guilds are less international than the Oscars are. I think there's still hope for Bong to win at the Oscars. But now, last night after DGA, I just put I surrendered and put Sam Mendes up to win director, and I've kept Parasite for Best Picture because I don't know what else to do. Somebody else pile in here and help us. Joyce, you next. What is going to win each of those categories and why?
Mendes has director on lock, so you can just forget about that one. I think after the Globe, which was a surprise, like everyone just kind of went on that boat because 1917 opened and people really liked that movie. I really enjoyed that movie, but I kind of feel like it's yet another year of the technical movie winning directing again. Like it has the most directing, and we haven't really had like a film with more like artistic directorial achievement win in a while. I think like you could argue like the last one was probably The King's Speech, that wasn't like a flashy, showy film. And 1917 has the one take and everything. So I think he has that on lock. So he got the DGA. They've only mismatched 7 times in its 71-year history, and 3 of those times the DJ winner wasn't even nominated. And poor Ben Affleck is going to be the only DJ winner of the decade not to win the Oscar too, because he wasn't nominated. But picture, I think it's between 1917 and Parasite. Poor Hollywood. I think that its hopes died once it lost PGA. I think it really needed that to stay in the race. Like SAG a little less so. So I think it's probably 3rd right now. And I think the safe choice is to go with 1917 in picture, but I'm still a believer and I still have Parasite in picture because I think it can pull it off. Like that SAG win was huge, although I believed in it once it got the nomination last month. And there was so much love. We got a standing ovation just for coming out. And the thing is like, 1917 wasn't nominated at SAG in any category. So we can't say that the actors hate it because I think it's a very well-liked movie, but we don't know if they like it more than Parasite because we don't really, like none of their actors nominated anywhere. So we can't really have anything to go off of. But I think Parasite, I think if it is as beloved as it is, it can pull out more 2s and 3s. And the biggest thing holding it back is that, they have the default international film category to award it. But I think the film being so big and such a crossover hit that it would be really disappointing if it just walked away with international films. So I have it winning picture and original screenplay right now, and I think it could take editing too because it also won Ace.
Yeah, I think it's probably a 2-way race between 1917 and Parasite for Best Picture. I agree with Joyce that DGA has been so reliable for Best Director that Sam Mendes probably has that locked up. But it's interesting. I wrote an article after the SAG Awards because I could feel like it was going to happen. Like we had 1917, which was kind of a surprise at the PGA Awards, and then Parasite wins at the SAG Awards, and everyone proclaims it's now a two-way race, and they're probably right. But I having flashbacks to literally just 3 years ago when La La Land was sweeping through everything. La La Land won the PGA award. It won the JGA award. It won BAFTA, which is coming up as we're recording this. But it lost Best Picture. And then Hidden Figures that year won the SAG Award for its ensemble cast, and it lost Best Picture. It was Moonlight that ended up winning. So I don't see a Moonlight besides these two films, but I would caution on saying that it's only a two-way race. I mean, you know, Oscar voting hasn't started yet, so if Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is looking like an underdog now before Oscar voting instead of looking like the top dog that gets, you know, divisive opinions about it, maybe it will pull in some of those number 2, number 3, number 4 votes, especially because it is about Hollywood. It's about show business, and the Oscars don't always love that, but they've loved it before with like The Artist and Argo. So I do think there's still room for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but it's a narrow lane that movie is in. And now that 1917 has started winning, now I'm seeing like a mini backlashes pop up about that movie, which I never really would have expected. I thought Joker was going to be the villain of the Oscar season. But yeah, a lot of people are griping about 1917.
We've already lived through the Joker backlash, so
yeah, Joker backlash is so 5 minutes ago. Now hating 1917 is cool.
I don't hear any of the hating 1917.
I mean,
come on.
There's a party line going, and I don't know if it's started by another studio or fans of Parasite, but the party line, I see it in the forums all the time. Oh, it's a gimmick. It's a one-trick movie.
Oh, that's ridiculous. I
totally disagree with that, but that's what they're using right now.
Yeah, I agree with the disagreement in the sense that I love 1917. I think it's an incredibly immersive, powerful movie, so I'm definitely not part of that. But it also could be one of those things that's more online than it is actually something that's...
it's a couple of grumpy people
but there is still a sense, like with La La Land, that if you're a front runner and you look like you're out front, and if you're a member of the Academy who looks at it and goes like, well, it wasn't so great, if you think it's the front runner, that's going to increase the likelihood maybe that you rank it 8th or 9th instead of 3rd or 4th.
I really don't think people will rank that, or I think Parasite has a greater chance of being ranked lower than 1917, because I feel like there are some like old stodgy voters who just like, I cannot have a foreign language film win Best Picture, but I could see maybe like 1970 getting like 5s and 6s and 7s or something. I don't think it's going to be dead last anywhere really. But I do think there is like some kind of I don't even want to call it backlash, but I think it's more kind of like disappointment, especially on like film Twitter, that like this is like sweeping when you have like Scorsese and like Tarantino in the mix. Like 8 months ago, people were like, oh my God, this could be like Scorsese versus Tarantino. And then like Sam Mendes comes out of nowhere. And he's going to win his second directing Oscar 20 years after his first. So I think it's more disappointing for fans of these other movies, that he's kind of going to coast to his second win so easily, when we have like Tarantino, who has yet to win his first Oscar, and Scorsese was vying for a second with this like 12-year-long passion project that probably is going to walk away empty-handed.
Susan, let's bring in the veteran Susan Wloszczyna here. Susan, the winner of Best Picture, the movie tends to be the movie that moves them emotionally the most, and Parasite certainly does that. It gives you that kick in the gut, and Parasite has a bona fide rooting factor. 1917 was a deeply moving movie experience to me. I didn't expect it to be, but the wonderful surprise plot twist that happened and the wonderful finale scene under the tree, there are these magical moments in 1917 that just fill you with wonder and a thrill. I think both of those movies achieve this emotional grip with the viewer that make them the front runner. What's your take?
Well, I found Parasite more emotional for me than 1917, just because I admired it and I was involved in it. But Parasite hits a nerve for the here and now, more for me. And I mean, we're in a time kind of political turmoil and things are happening overseas. So, maybe 1917 is also relevant here. But the one I think is suffering a little bit, which, when I saw it in the summer, I thought it was great. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think, and even The Irishman kind of suffer from being kind of nostalgia in a way, more than of this time now. And, it's fine to, put a twist on what happened with the Manson family, but I still feel that both 1917 and Parasite have an edge there as far as relevance.
Chris, we're all about the ranking of these movies, this 1 and 2 and 3 on the ballot, and those often determine who's ahead. Your experience with the ballot, what in the past, what does that tell you about today? In other words, what movie do you think will be more consistently ranked of those two, 1, 2, and 3?
This is going to be an odd year. I don't sense myself talking to people that they're going to rank either one of the movies we're discussing as Parasite 1917 in the very bottom. Like what I think on La La Land year, it won so often and so many places that people that wanted something else to win, and it turned out to be Moonlight, started ranking it 8th or 9th just to have something different. That was my feeling. Last year, I feel like Green Book and Roma, I feel like they were right. Both sides were ranking that very low because it basically was a 2-film race between those two. Shape of Water and 3 Billboards. It felt that way. Here, I don't sense that a lot of people are going to rank either one lower than say 4th or 5th. And we haven't talked about PGA. I don't think enough. Of all of the precursors, that's the only one that has the preferential ballot, just like the Oscars. Now, it's a different group of people. PGA is probably, what would you say, Tom? 2/3 TV people,
Right,
as opposed to film people. But last year was a tough year to predict, and they got Green Book right. And the year before was a tough year to predict, and they got Shape of Water right.
PGA was right, yes.
Right. So that's my group right now that I'm relying on. I'm going to stick with 1917.
Yeah, but PGA, though, I think Joyce made this point earlier, is that it's less international. Joyce, we can hear you typing.
I'm just pulling up like my stat sheets.
Oh, okay.
No, like I think like, I mean, this could be like Spotlight when, that year was probably the weirdest in recent memory when, PGA won with The Big Short. And then we also had The Revenant and Spotlight won, and then won SAG. And Spotlight was the underdog. And I think Parasite is the underdog here. And like what Daniel was talking about earlier with Moonlight, like Parasite is the Moonlight, like it's the underdog. Like, and 1917 is like in this analogy, La La Land, but La La Land was so much bigger than 1917. So I don't think like the backlash, as it were, will hit as big with 1917. And also the season is so much shorter that I don't think it will even have time to develop. Like I think it being a late breaking movie that just opened on Christmas, like it came out at the perfect time during the season that lost 2 weeks because it, people, there's already interest in it, I think. And, there's a buzz about like the one take, and then it won those 2 Globes and then opened wide and it's doing very well at the box office. And now it's basically sweeping almost everywhere it's nominated. And we know it's going to sweep the BAFTAs because it's BAFTAs and it's British. So, and then right after that, it's the Oscars, and voting is only like 5 days this year. So I don't think there's going to be enough time for whatever backlash there may be to develop to truly hurt 1917.
But I mentioned 2 things about that really favor Parasite, which goes against my theory. One is I lament the people that watch 1917 only at home, or I mean that's a big screen movie, whereas Parasite you could really watch anywhere. So I'm wondering if people that do, most of your Oscar voters probably are watching it, have watched it on a screener at home, and rather than in the theater. So I wonder about that. And I just realized this morning, what perfect timing on Neon's part. Parasite hits DVD tomorrow, which means it's got an extra wave of publicity this week. And I think almost all the voters have already seen it. I'm not saying this from that perspective, but can you imagine the voters right now, the people at home, that Parasite's hitting DVD, which means it'll be on demand and in all the different places. Can you imagine the voters that are going to hear from their relatives and friends, please tell me you're voting for Parasite over the next 6 or 7 or 8 days? Because those people are seeing it for the first time right now.
Parasite hasn't won as many precursor awards as we thought it would. I thought it would have won something along the line. I mean, that it would have a better poll. I have it at number 1 right now, but I totally disagree with you, Chris, on this big screen, watch it at home thing. Every Oscar voter in the world has lots of big screen stuff at home. I think that's an old argument that's not valid. I think we have consistently underrated 1917 over and over at our own peril. There were people like me and a few of you guys who saw it coming at the Golden Globes, and I can't remember what I predicted for PGA and GGA. Oh, I'm sorry, for DGA, I was going a long shot limb for Quentin. But now it's undeniable. Now it's 1917 is certainly going to be in the top 3 of your. We're talking about the preferential ballot, which is a weight ballot. It's a category very different from every other one at the Oscars, and so having the most number 2 and 3 rankings often propels you to win this race. Is what we're talking about. So certainly 1917 is got to be in your top 3. So the question is Parasite. Is this factor of it being a foreign film, Asia-based, Asian language, in other words, this half a world away thing matter, it didn't get any Oscar nominations for acting.
Well, neither did 1917.
Well, that's true, but it's not. It's less of an actor.
I know it wasn't on the ballot for stunts because when it didn't get in for stunts, it caused a little commotion.
Oh, you're talking about SAG.
SAG Awards. It was not on the ballot for stunts. So I wonder if it was on the ballot for any other categories, considering.
But the Oscars, you whited in, and I
we're talking about SAG Awards. We can explain away, I think, the non-1917 nominations there.
Yes, and I think 1917 too falls into that category of Slumdog Millionaire, The Last Emperor. I think it's the kind of movie that gets excused for not getting Oscar nominations because the performances are fine, the actors are unknown, and they're kind of representative of all soldiers in the battle. I think there are reasons for that, and I think in the case of Parasite, it might just be the trouble with foreign language of having them.
Or they also don't like Asian actors.
Yeah, they may just. That's right. They may just be biased. No, but God, it's fascinating, isn't it? Wow.
I mean, well, like they're both gonna like break stats like either way because 1917 is nominated for editing, and we can excuse that with the one take thing because Birdman still won Best Picture, and it has no acting like we just talked about, and neither does Parasite. But Parasite does have editing. And they both have screenplay, which was huge for 1917 because not many people were expecting that. That was just a total like, I love this movie. I'm just gonna like vote for it everywhere. So like, it would be weird because I don't think 1917 is winning screenplay. I don't think anyone is predicting that. So it would be weird if 1917 were to win picture, director, and like all these texts without writing and screenplay and acting. Whereas Parasite can win editing and screenplay. And since the preferential ballot, there have been 3 films that won picture, director, and screenplay. And then if you like eliminate those, there's only been 2 cases where picture won director and no screenplay, and 5 cases where picture won writing and no director. So it's like screenplay and picture have been more linked in the preferential era than directing and picture.
But has any Best Foreign Language Film winner also won Best Picture? Right. No. So it has a way to be already honored, and that's what happened with Roma.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing with Roma last year. Which, if that's their mentality, then why would they change their mentality?
But I think like Parasite is different from Roma. Like I think Roma being nominated last year and being probably number 2 paved the way for a potential Parasite win this year. And Roma was not beloved like Parasite is. Like Roma was something you admired. And you could like see that it was like great filmmaking and you could see that it's prestige, but everyone loves Parasite. Like none of my friends wanted to watch Roma and they still haven't watched Roma, but they all wanted to watch Parasite.
And I thought one wrench into this. We're keeping it down to 2 films basically, and I agree with those 2 films. I spoke to an Oscar voter late last week. I said, "What's your top 3?" 1 was Irishman, 2 was Jojo Rabbit, and 3 was Marriage Story. Didn't have either one in their top 3.
Yeah, I think Jojo Rabbit's interesting because on paper that looks a lot like Green Book, like no nomination for director, has an acting nomination and a writing nomination and a surprise editing nomination. So I wonder if like we could see just like a complete
choice in Toronto.
Yeah, I wonder if that could be the one thing Green Book had, obviously, that Jojo didn't, was that Green Book won PGA, but we don't know the results on that preferential ballot. How close did Jojo Rabbit get to the top? Because we're not really thinking about it as a major contender, and I'd probably have it maybe ranked 5th or 6th in my own predictions for the Oscars. But I'm like, is it that sleeping giant? Like I part of me wonders, but yeah.
But it has a strong rooting factor. People really love it.
And it's sort of like this feel-good movie that also feels important, which is something that, 1917 and Parasite, as I adore those films, but I wouldn't call them feel-good movies by any stretch of the imagination. So Jojo Rabbit could be that feel-good alternative, especially in a category where we've also got Marriage Story, which is very dark and emotional. Irishman is dark and brooding. Joker is like brooding the movie. And so Jojo Rabbit's going to stand out, and I wouldn't be surprised if that ranks relatively high on some ballots.
What if we've been sizing up this whole Derby race wrong in the sense that The Irishman was our number 1 movie with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for a long time at Gold Derby. It would go back and forth in terms of presumption of what was out front. And The Irishman is just so prestigious, so powerful, so well done, so, so much a kind of made for Best Picture film contender, that what if that is everybody's number 2 and number 3 choice? If you win by being getting the most number 1, 2, and 3s, what if Irishman's been in second place all along and all of these awards didn't pop through? We're underestimating it now, and now it is really the number 2 and 3 choice across the board, and that's the movie we're suddenly underestimating, and that comes through because of the preferential ballot. Who has thoughts?
I have a thought.
Go ahead.
I think one of the other reasons why Roma did not win Best Picture was because it was from Netflix, and they haven't given a streaming movie that honor yet, and that might it could
I don't buy
happen
that whole anti-Netflix thing. Look what just happened at the Annie Awards, and and the whole Roma thing with a potential backlash last year to stay on, Susan, stay on.
Okay.
The Roma did so well otherwise at the Oscars last year, director and stuff. So I don't know.
One thing about Irishman, there's a thread in our forums about could it get blanked? Could it not win anything? But there's a path where it might win editing. Thelma is a favorite among the Academy. It could win writing. Stephen Zalian is a favorite.
Absolutely.
It could win. I know a lot of people are predicting it for visual effects. It could win 3, 4, even beyond picture if things fell right.
And we are so fickle as experts and pundits. Many of us had those predictions just a couple of weeks ago, and now have ditched them. So it's just we're trying to size up this race based on the shifting winds, and in fact, maybe they didn't shift at all. Maybe Irishman is really out front in a lot of these races, and we're not giving it the credit it deserves as a contender.
Well, one interesting thing we haven't seen yet under this preferential ballot system, but it could totally happen on a preferential ballot, where if you have a film that is loved everywhere but keeps landing in like second or third place in all these other categories where it's just a plurality vote, and at other award shows where it's just a plurality vote, like, could Irishman be the first Best Picture winner of this era with no other wins? Spotlight came close.
It could be our Grand Hotel, except that
it could, like, Spotlight came close. It won screenplay and picture, and that's it. And that's the fewest Oscars for a Best Picture winner in generations. I can't remember if Grand Hotel was the last one that won that.
It was The Greatest Show on Earth, which won the now defunct Story Oscar.
Yeah. I feel like this is going to happen eventually. It just so happens that if a movie is liked enough to rank highly enough on preferential ballots to win Best Picture, chances are it wins something. But there might be a case at some point going forward that we're going to see that lone Best Picture winner.
Well, let me ask a question since we talked about preferential. If I understand everything right, Tom or anybody can speak up here. Let's say something doesn't get 50%. So the first movie out, the movie in ninth place, those votes get counted. Their second place choice gets counted first. Is that?
Yeah, it gets redistributed.
We're almost certain, and I'm sorry to say this to the Fox people, but Ford versus Ferrari is probably
right.
Your ninth movie. It has no writing, no directing, no acting. It's probably in ninth. Well, who did those people most likely? Who did they rank second?
Oh, I see where you're going.
Because I've asked myself that question the last 3 or 4 years, and I've been miserable at picking Best Picture for a while now. So it gets down to 2, and I always pick the wrong one. But I'm wondering, who did the Ford versus Ferrari? Are they very male dominated, or are they?
Of course.
I mean, who do you think they go to? Do they go to a 1917 male? Do they go to an Irishman, which is very male?
Yeah, it's interesting. This is always worth thinking about, and I wonder if maybe on average things do distribute that way, where if you're a Ford v Ferrari guy, you're more likely to be also a 1917 guy. But every once in a while, I'll look at my own rankings of things, and they do not fall in that kind of predictable way. Like, I have, like, my personal 1 and 2 would be Parasite and then 1917. So this is my favorite Best Picture race in a while. But then, like, Ford v Ferrari probably comes in, like, towards the bottom of the pack for me personally. So it's like 1917 and Ford v Ferrari both being sort of action oriented doesn't really make me slot them close to each other. I have probably Marriage Story right after 1917. So it's each individual person's tastes can be so different and mercurial and based on so many different factors that you never know. Maybe if you voted for Ford v Ferrari as your number 1, maybe your number 2 is Marriage Story. That's very possible.
Or just that you're insane, Daniel. That could also be enough.
I'm not the only one. This is show business. I'm not the only one.
Any final thoughts here?
So we're all confused, and
I'm not.
You're not confused, Susan. What are you betting on?
1917.
Okay, why?
No, I just think that Parasite will be done well by having the Best Foreign Language Oscar, and 1917. Like, I think Joyce is right. It came in right at the right prime moment during late in the season, and I like Sam Mendes. I'm hoping he gets another Oscar again because I like his movies and I want to make more. But I think I feel like I would like Parasite to win Best Picture. That was my favorite picture of the year, but I just don't feel it. Look, the voters are mostly still male and old. Okay, I mean, as much as they improved it, and I just think that they're still going to go with the one, they're not going to vote for Ford versus Ferrari, which was red meat for men, basically. They're going to go with 1917, I think.
Well, it is true that the Oscars do still skew older and male, as we've seen from the nominations. So the consensus at Gold Derby is that 1917 is out front. Parasite is a very, very close second, it appears. And honestly, Irishman, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, even something like Jojo Rabbit. Like, I would never say never on the preferential ballot in this new era. But we're going to have more statistics to come when the BAFTAs announce their winners, in a few days, and the Writers Guild in a few days. We're recording this on Monday. Those take place in the coming weekend. So if you think it'll happen, go to goldderby.com and make your predictions. We will probably be back reversing everything we said once we hear what the next awards groups have to say. So until then, good luck predicting.